Okay, let's get started. Kyle, yeah, fantastic. Good morning, everybody. Well, actually, good morning, or good evening, or good night, wherever you are. My name is Simon Rubens. I'm a CEO of Energy Conference Network, and I'd like to welcome everybody to our webinar today. One of a series of webinars we've been running over the last few weeks, and we'll be running over the next couple of months. Today's webinar will be looking at the emerging cybersecurity threats in oil and gas. Very, very timely topic for today. Yes, it's a black swan year, 2020, as I don't need to tell you all. With the challenges brought forth by COVID-19, as well as a number of other factors, it's an incredibly challenging time for the oil and gas sector, and also incredibly challenging for those of you who are charged with protecting oil and gas technology and infrastructure. So we've got a great lineup of panelists today to address some key issues. The panelists have strong experience within operating companies, service companies, academia, and technology companies. So how we'll run today's webinar is we'll look at some 5 areas of discussion, five topics, which we'll run through. Before that, each of the panelists will introduce themselves. We'll go into those 5 topics, and then we'll finish up with a Q&A session. So you'll see at the bottom of your screens a Q&A button there, which you can click and ask questions, and we'll endeavour to get to all your questions, or as many as we can. We will email out to you all the attendees. Will email out the PowerPoint presentation, which you're looking at now, and the recording. So there's no need to take screenshots or madly scramble to take notes. Yeah, you can watch a recording at your leisure at a later point. Before I introduce Philippe, who's going to be your moderator for today, I just want to mention that we do have some things coming up. Energy Conference Network has some things coming up which may be of interest to you. We're running a 3-day virtual digitalization conference on the 4th to 6th of April. Sorry, not April, August, which is free for oil and gas companies to attend. We've got some fantastic presentations there. So you can see our website, energyconferencenetwork.com, for information on that, as well as our physical conferences, our in-person conferences, which we're planning on running still in September and October. We've got conferences on blockchain, machine learning, supply chain. We've got new protocols which we've implemented to address what we need to do on site for COVID, but we are still planning on running our events in September and October, and I think many people in Houston, all our events are going to be in Houston, are looking forward to getting back out and networking and reacquainting themselves with colleagues. So look forward to seeing some of you there. But now we'll get stuck into the webinar. I'm going to introduce Philippe to you firstly, and you're in very capable hands with Philippe. So Philippe, are you there?
I am. Hello, everyone. So I guess I'm going to introduce myself and then ask every panelist to introduce themselves as well. Some of you may know me. So I'm a board independent director and advisor. My field of expertise is in digital transformation and technology integration. After running the internet for the Salt Lake 2002 Olympics, I ended up in the oil and gas sector. I worked with all the 4 oil and gas major service companies, working on projects and offerings related to digital offering. And in between, I started a few companies. I'm an active member of the Society of Petroleum Engineers, actually receiving the Management Information Award again this year. It's the 2nd time. And I'm also in an InfraGard, and we'll touch on that a little bit later. So with that, Michael, would you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. My name is Michael Lewis. I'm Policy and Framework Advisor at Chevron. Been at Chevron over 38 years now, with about 20 of those spent in cybersecurity, specialization in risk management and quantitative risk assessment. I also moonlight on a committee within the API, Information Technology Security Subcommittee, as lead of the policy work group.
Thank you very much. Art?
Hi, I'm Art Conklin. I'm a professor at the University of Houston. I work in the College of Technology where I do cybersecurity. We have a master's in cybersecurity for operational technology. And I'm deeply involved with the DHS effort for the ICS-JWG, the Industrial Control Systems Joint Working Group, and upper level DHS-led cybersecurity working group across all the U.S. government, looking at workforce issues and how do we get the right people in the right jobs in this area.
Very impressive. Thank you. And Steve, you're muted.
I am.
Okay.
So I'm the founder of Intelligent Plant. Been doing 20 years of data analytics and industrial data sets, usually time series ones. Physics background, software degree, 14 years since I set up the company, doing up until now a lot of analytics on oil and gas data. That meant dealing with all of the challenges in cybersecurity that are there in terms of that really sensitive data set of your current operations. So we're all about openness, honesty, and integrity. Yeah, looking forward to this.
Thank you very much, Steve. Michael, I'm going to start addressing you a question, and then everyone feels free to pitch in. Of course, we're going to address that quote-unquote new normal, this whole distributed workforce that we have now, working from home. There's a lot of cybersecurity issues linked to that on the technical level, but also on the societal level, because you start having sometimes working actually with your kid's computer, and the kids are around. We don't know if they're going to go back to school or not. All those kind of good stuff. So, what is your word of advice and thoughts on this tough question?
So to handle the kids is to make sure you have adult kids and therefore they're not at the house and generally don't come by. I realize some of you can't quite do that right off the bat, but that's one solution to that. As far as at Chevron, what we've done, obviously we're working from home. We actually have had almost all the office employees at home prior to Harris County putting out the lockdowns. We'll probably work in that manner, I would suspect, the rest of the year. We've got a 4-stage process for getting people back into the offices, and they have certain criteria that have to be met before those stages go through. And then there's a whole set of protocols for getting back into the offices. Our offices themselves are not closed. We could go down there if we needed to do things. And the 3 stages we have are, we would have folks that really need to be there back in first. Then we would go to a point where we were alternating kind of shifts. And then the last stage is everybody goes back. When we first moved off, we're taking advantage of use of public cloud. We were on a mission to move most of our stuff to cloud well before this. And when the lockdowns first occurred, we did have some issues with VPN, and we actually made a risk decision not to use VPN for the first few months. And now we've got to the point where we have sufficient capacity that we've gone back to we're recommending its use. So it allowed us to provide access to all of our employees, taking a little bit of a security hit. Although when you think about the risk, it's kind of interesting. I'm actually in the process of doing a risk assessment, trying to understand what the actual risks are. But if everybody's off network, lateral movement's impossible. So if you do get a hit, your workstation may go down, but you may not affect the rest of the corporation. And so it's a little bit of an interesting environment. You lose some defenses, so you're more at risk, but you actually may have a lower risk profile to the corporation. So haven't quite worked all that through yet, but we'll get that in a couple of months here. If there is anything else I need to cover, that's probably good enough for now. Let other folks jump in if they wish.
Just one quick question for you. I've heard some other operators are deciding to actually have people working for 2 weeks at home and then 2 weeks in the office. and have kind of a A-B type of team. Is Chevron planning to do anything like this?
So the closest thing to that would be our phase 2 comeback, where we would have limited folks in the office at any one time, unless you were in a susceptible group, which seems to change every day now. Originally, it was over 65 or so, or over 60 or whatever it is. And then those folks would be left to the last phase, which would be everybody comes back to the office. So yeah, there's some thought about doing that. As with many of us, many of the oil companies were open concept cubicles. It's a little hard to space properly with cubicles. And so therefore they would want to limit the number of folks that were in the building at any one time.
Sense. Anyone else want Steve or Art, sorry?
Yeah, Michael, I think it's really good to hear someone looking at the positive side in terms of this might actually have a positive effect as well as a negative one. I think that's really interesting and good to take that balanced view. And, you know, I find it interesting to think about these things because in the past, when people were working from home, would we have paid as much attention to the risk and perhaps the other side of this? You know, for us, we've got guys now, everyone working from home, but prior to that, we had a number of people geographically distributed that couldn't come into the office. And it's been a real way to sort of make a balance because now everyone's equal in every meeting, where before some people were in the room and some people were outside the room. And how have you found similar things at Chevron?
Yeah, so we're geographically dispersed as well, but we also have 2 major U.S. locations, one in Houston and one in California. And so this is very similar to the way I worked for about 15 years when my supervisor was in California and most of my colleagues were in California, where I was always on video conferencing, or not video conferencing then, but web conferencing. So about the only difference is my screen's a lot smaller since I'm on a laptop rather than having 2 nice terminals or monitors at work. But other than that, it's basically the same. I have heard some folks complain about that because we're now to the point where we're scheduling meetings after meetings after meetings, which I was used to 15 years ago, but some of the folks that are used to walking to meeting rooms haven't really lived in that environment before. So they're going to have to get used to it. But we've had those capabilities, and so we've had WebEx in place for a while. We're moving to Microsoft Teams now as a mechanism for managing some of the projects. And again, most of the stuff that I have worked on has had people in multiple locations. And so we've had to work in this manner anyway.
Yeah, I think it's quite forward-looking as well. The fact you're saying we're going to be like this till the end of the year. You know, I agree with you completely, and I think a lot of people think this is really temporary. Equally, the fact that you effectively locked down prior to lockdown, credit to you. Credit to you. Yeah.
And that's why I think we'll be out to the rest of the year, because I think we're going to be more cautious than perhaps the state or the city may be. So they want to make sure. I mean, again, safety is a key element of all oil companies, and so we're going to err on that side before we bring everybody back.
I'd like, this is Art, I'd like to throw in, we quickly talk about when we say cybersecurity, when it devolved to the technical. Do I have a VPN? Do I have X? Do I have Y? When in reality, this new normal and distributed work, the risk and the safety aspects are people-related things more than anything else. Yeah. And as Michael's already alluded, as we were talking earlier, I've had 3 meetings today already, one involving Australia on their time zone, Estonia on their time zone. And so this quote-unquote new normal is there separation between home and work? Is there a separation in time anymore? Because we're not moving time zones, we're moving them inside ourselves. And as I'm sitting here talking, fortunately my cats will not let any secrets go away, but who else is in the room? You know, we joke about our coworkers now, our kids, our spouses, things like that. But the whole work environment, all this stuff has tremendously changed. And I'm not certain that we've come to grips with that and how to manage it. And we will burn out people. We will make mistakes and do things that otherwise we wouldn't have done because of the work-life separations. And I think that's a risk element that this new normal people have to start taking into considerations.
Completely agree. I wonder as well, though, because I always felt like the people aspects were ignored in the past. So when it comes to cybersecurity, and weren't given the same credence that they should have been given against the technical.
Well, when I say the people aspects, I'm not talking just about like Michael suddenly clicking on a link and, you know, answering an email. But if we start holding these meetings around the clock because global and because of this, well, you wake up like I did this morning really, really early to meet in Estonia after going to bed really, really late because I was in Australia. Someone's going to click on the wrong thing. Someone's going to do the wrong thing. Someone's going to make a rash decision that they otherwise wouldn't. And these all lead to risk, which is why oil and gas, and rightfully so, is so focused on safety, because risk has huge downsides in that industry, and they recognize that. And so I think part of what we have to look at is how this quote unquote new normal, which will be the future, I don't think it's going to change in January either. How does that affect our risk? Where do we go with that?
So actually, can you share a little bit your thoughts? I mean, we already engaged actually in the second question I wanted to ask, which is really that these societal aspects of security, how do we guard against those challenges? And do you have any suggestions?
Well, I think that we have to first take a 12-step program approach to this, which is recognize there's a problem. I think we're quick and easy to recognize the security problems and challenges associated with the technical. Like when we suddenly got into this situation, some companies were forward thinking, had a lot of remote workers, so they didn't have to send everybody home with a laptop. My university, for instance, in the course of during spring break, we all went on spring break and never came back. And we're basically told, we hope you took home what you needed to take home because you can't come back. And technically, we've scrambled and done a lot of things to get the right laptops to the right people, the right VPN connections, the right credentials. And that was actually very easy to solve. We also use Microsoft Teams. I want to give a shout out to the Zooms of the world, the Microsoft Teams of the world, not just because these are great products, but these products have rapidly put changes out that were needed because suddenly we're all using them in a critical way. So the technical side is easy, but I don't think we've even talked and addressed about the people side, about how do I share documents? How do I make certain that I don't put something into the wrong position? You know, it's very, very easy for people to make mistakes, and policies, procedures, and structure of work are all designed, the process is designed to hopefully weed that out. And now suddenly we've uprooted that. How do we enforce that? How do we drive that? How do we make that happen in this new environment?
Michael, have you noticed any big challenges with all those remote workforce at Chevron?
So I agree with Art. The people aspects are key. Some of them, like sharing documents, we've had that issue anyway, even if we are in the office, because we share documents with third parties. I've got to share things with California and other folks outside of the company. So we have solutions for those. They could be better, but they need to be out there. But in some of the other calls I've been in with other conferences, I've heard people mention the childcare element, and the response that usually came back was that folks need to be flexible. I mean, Art kind of alluded to it today. No, we're not working 9 to 5 or 8 to 6 or even 8 to 7 anymore. There's a good chance you're going to be working longer hours, or you're moving the hours around during the day. So if schooler was in session, you had to homeschool your kid from 8 to 10 or provide lunch for them at 12, you're not going to be in the office at that time. And so you may need to work there later. There's also, and again, it's really more on the individual to watch out for themselves. I know I had a really good distinct difference between work and home prior to this. And now I am taking some calls and some meetings that I probably would not have done in the past because I wouldn't have been in the office. But now my office is next door to the bedroom, and I can just walk over there and turn it on. So that makes me more available. I'm also taking advantage of some situations. I'm going to RSA Asia Pacific in a couple of weeks. I would never have done that before, but it's all virtual. So I have the ability to dial in in the evening and watch the sessions until I get tired and then pick up the recordings. So there's some advantages to this to the environment as well as other issues we have to watch out for.
I think that what Michael just brought up, that their advantages are something that everybody needs to continue to take stock of and take advantage of those advantages, because there are things that actually in education are better. And it's one of the things alluded to earlier. Oh, wait, I can have meetings backed up to meetings because I don't have to transit from meeting to meeting. Well, now if you want to go take RSA Pacific, you don't have to fly there. You just switch to that channel. If you want to take a class at a local university, switch to that channel. And figure out how to take advantage of these challenges and opportunities is going to be a big differentiator between the winners and losers coming out of this.
Completely agree. And I think, you alluded to it, but the blending is an interesting one too, because you've got a mindset when you're at work and you've got a mindset when you're at home. And if you're switching on and off in terms of whether you're working or not, there's that very high likelihood that you'll not be in the same mindset as you'd normally be in the job. And I think there's been reports of people working for banks having that issue where someone phones their house and gets access to banking systems because you're in your house. You're not thinking like you're a bank employee.
Right.
And there's some risks around that, but it's great to talk about the positives too, because I love to talk about that. But and if you can make use of those, then you're going to do a lot better than the ones that don't.
Elon Musk made news a couple of years ago when he talked about how does he manage all his companies, and he actually separates his calendar into today's a Tesla day, tomorrow's a SpaceX day. And he does not, if he's working SpaceX today and you have a problem in one of his other businesses, you got to wait till it's your day. And people laugh and people say, well, that would never happen here. But we have to figure out how to do those things if we're going to be effective as employees.
We had a guy, he's been working remotely for a long time now, and I think I've got a lot of respect from him. He started off and he said, hey, Steve, you know what I do? I get dressed for work. Because I know when I'm dressed for work, I'm ready to go to work. And I know when I get undressed and changed into my home clothes, I'm no longer working. And he's very disciplined. You phone him after work time, you don't get him.
Yeah, that routine is very important. Actually, I'll make a shameless plug. I have a blog, philippeflichy.com, and one of the blog I've posted 2 weeks ago was actually relating on some of the research that we have done 30 years ago at the Media Lab on teleworking. And so there's a lot around organizing your environment, organizing your day, and mindset. I remember years back, I was talking with a judge for children, and I asked the lady, but with these horrible things, how do you go back home and are able to have, cherish your own kids? And she said, that's very simple. When I put my coat on the hanger, that's it. And I really encourage all of the people working remotely to have these kind of things. I'm not going to read the article. There's a lot of different things about that. Just in interest of time, let's go on to unless someone has something to add at this point. So the third point we want to address is really what risk appetite do we have in this type of new environment? How do we make, how is our tolerance for all these risks that we have identified? And I think there's also still some technical challenges. So I mentioned InfraGard. We are receiving a lot of emails telling us that the spoofing has been increasing tremendously. And that goes back exactly to what we said earlier. You're not in the same mindset and you don't pay attention the same way. Though I think that nowadays, as we are showing in this platform how private and work life are kind of intermixing, that means that also in our private emails and so on, we should be extremely careful. I mean, even for your own security, but now I've seen clearly during this last few months, people trying to target me in very different ways than they had in the past. And more on they've made the link between the personal and professional emails and trying to tell you to, suddenly reset your password or whatever. And so since we're on cybersecurity and the human aspect of things, one thing that I've seen that works very well for me is that I click on the name that appears and I look at the real email address. And that's already gives away a lot. But use your mind. Figure out why would someone call me at that point. When I was the CEO of a company, I received an email supposedly from the CFO, and it was not. And I would have clicked on the button, boom, there would be a large sum of money that would have been transferred. So any feedback from any of you on this aspect of the tolerance of security, of risk versus this kind of new norm? And I would add that on the surveys that came out, a lot of people are saying that they like to be at least partially at home. Ideally, I think what we're seeing, people would like to do a 50-50. What I've heard from many CEOs that I'm dealing with, productivity actually went up, especially in the software industry with programmers, clearly went up. And when you talk to those programmers, they're like, hey, fantastic. I don't have to waste my time commuting to the office. I can go jog with my dog or whatever else they want to do.
Well, I think one of the things that you alluded to, though, which is really, really important, is risk appetite. Oil and gas, the entire sector, everybody approaches this pretty much the same way, which is safety is not just a word, it has to be how we run business. Risk is not just a word, it has to be how we run business, because just too much is at stake otherwise. And from that standpoint, the industry and each firm in the industry has developed their own appetite slant policy procedure mechanism for managing to that. And that's a strength of this industry. And that's a strength that needs, each of these companies have it, and they need to keep that going and use that strength. Don't suddenly say, oh, it's a new norm, we don't have to do risk anymore, or we're going to do risk differently. I think that would be a huge mistake.
Yeah, I agree. And again, we've got two different types of working environments at Chevron. We've been talking mostly about the office so far, but in the operational technology space, people are still coming on site because we don't allow control from the outside. And so we haven't adjusted our risk appetite there at all. We're still trying to maintain those sites as they are. We have opened our ways up to a few other things that we might not have considered in the past. I talked about not using VPN to begin with. We're also trying to take advantage of some of the newer technologies like augmented reality, the Microsoft HoloLens, and doing some inspections that we may have done on site originally, doing them virtually now, with a customer on site or something of that nature. So I don't know if that's a higher risk because that's still on our network, but it's certainly maintaining, it's protecting the employee, which may be another risk that we're looking at here, trying to make sure we're not exposing folks unnecessarily.
I think your OT example is a prime one that
Yes.
needs to stand out, that, you know, there's certain things that we're not going to change because the risk, it's not worth it.
Steve, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's quite interesting thinking about the word appetite, and if you adjust that slightly, because sometimes you're force-fed risk, and really we're all eating a lot of risk right now, and it's how you choose what you're going to eat, because you know, one thing that you change in order to reduce risk normally would now increase it. So because the situations change, we actually need to consider things in a different way. You know, even like thinking about DSE assessments, we call them in the UK, I'm not sure if it's the same in the US, but like you were talking about having a small screen. Our desks at home are not of the same quality and stuff as the ones at work. And so these risks are coming in as well, where people are getting tired fingers and wrists, and maybe, you know, the height of the desk isn't quite right. And we just don't have the same facilities at home.
That's funny you mentioning that. It's actually that same article. I even plugged some pictures from the US, whatever government body that suggests how you should be posturing yourself and all of that. So yes, it's very important.
Yeah.
And so actually, Steve, how do we grab the opportunities that are presented to us thanks to this crisis? I mean, that may sound like a little bit torturous question, but there, I mean, in a positive thinking, we always try to see what can we gain from a situation that anyway we cannot change immediately anyway. So what's your thought on that?
Yeah, I think the quote that comes to mind with this is never waste a crisis. You know, a crisis is a great opportunity for change. It's a great way to get the things you never managed to get done. And I see opportunities. I mean, remote working being the norm, we're probably going to pay attention to a lot of things that would have been there in remote working that we just didn't think about because it was the minority. You know, I think the Zoom stuff coming out, that was always the case. How many people were using Zoom before and didn't realize that there were some issues there? And how quickly have they fixed it now that everyone's using it? And I think that's one of those opportunities they've grabbed and gone with really well. I mean, this is like the digital transformation on steroids right now. I think the speed that we're picking up stuff and using it is way faster than what it was before in this industry, and this has really kick-started that. I think it will help. It will help the oil and gas industry a lot, the fact that this has happened, because a lot of these things that we were trying to do, we didn't have to do them. And when we don't have to do them, there's a natural human tendency to keep with what we're already doing. And that's, again, so bringing it back to change. It's about change. We can really get stuff changed. So think about what you want to do. Think about the things that were getting blocked before, and we can maybe get them done. And really, that's probably on a micro scale and a macro scale as well. You can imagine that, you know, we can change things in the department, we can change them in the company, and we can change them in the industry. And I feel it's a massive opportunity for change.
Any thoughts on that? I actually, to echo what you just said, Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, said that in few months we've evolved more in terms of digital transformation than over the last 3 years, and I think can even say the decade. I mean, it's impressive, especially for someone like me that studied teleworking 30 years ago, and have done teleworking. I had a company in France in the 90s that was teleworking, and to see that suddenly, you know, one spark, and boom, it goes on.
Yeah, I think the other one is we can look at the people who were remote working before, if they were consistently doing it and fully understand some of the challenges they had. You know, there are I remember speaking to one of our guys who was working remote, and he turned up at the office. You know, he was staying in a different country. He says, "Oh, I came over," and we're like, "Oh, what did you come over for?" He says, "Well, I was kind of worried. I felt like everyone was talking about me." And we said, "Well, why did you think that? He said, well, I don't know. I just like, I wasn't in the office. I didn't know what was going on. I felt like conversations were happening without me. I just need to be here so I feel better. And it's great to see the other side of that, to be, all of us isolated so that we can see what it's like to be isolated, fully understand that and know how to deal with it.
Well, I think one of the important things we also need to look at in this whole thing is what are the opportunities the crisis has created is, well, as we had to make this sudden change because it was forced upon us, it forced us all to be a little bit introspective about, what do I need to do? What has to happen? If I'm going to move, suddenly everybody's going home. What functions have to go home? What functions? We have this thing called business continuity, which, God forbid we ever have to exercise it for real. And oh, wait, now suddenly we're in a mode where we're open to dealing with change, which in most large companies, open to dealing with change is following the directive from above. And in this situation, it's everybody's open and looking. And so the opportunity is there to make some very good, smart changes. And as we mentioned earlier in the risk appetite, dangerous things. And so we have to rely upon that balance. And okay, so we want to make it so I can't use a VPN today because we just couldn't deploy it that fast. So we sit there and look at the risk and decide, here's where we're going to do it. Here's where we're not going to do it. No, we're not going to open the plants and let anybody run the controls from their bedroom because it's 2 a.m. And so it's not totally wild, wild west, but it is willing to take some looks at what was considered, oh, well, this is how we always do it. And those improvements, those opportunities will pay dividends.
You're nodding, Michael. Do you have?
Yeah, I agree. Although we still have some of the things lagging behind, like in our case, we had to set up a lot of single sign-on to go directly from the Chevron network to applications on the outside, like our payment system and our travel system. We'll skip the travel systems. We don't really need to do that right now. But in order to use them now, you actually have to VPN back in to get out, because there's no way to get to them directly from the cloud, even though they're cloud applications. And when we all have IDs and passwords, we just don't know what they are because no one ever told them to us, because we were always single signing on in. So there's some curious instances where we're kind of bouncing back and forth, but I agree. If 3 years ago or 2 years ago, if someone said you can access email without using VPN, you would have been laughed out of the room, because that was the way we've always done it. That's the way we have to do it. There's no questions about it. And yet when we were faced with a situation where either we don't do work or we compromise, we dropped it. And it's still, you can still run in that mode if you need to. So.
And have you noticed, if you are allowed to talk about that, any increase in malware activities or dishonest, basically hacking of the email system?
So far we've not seen that. And that's the risks are kind of interesting, as I said, because we've lost the network perimeter protections that were there. We've talked in our strategies about making sure we can build the endpoints up to simulate those types of protections going forward, so that we can run. Because our strategy in the future is to run off network anyway. That's kind of where we were headed. So this kind of forcing us to do a proof of concept. But again, if you truly are off network and you get infected, there's no lateral movement. Well, you might get your smart TV infected in the house, but the corporation probably doesn't care that much about that. You might, but that's another issue. So the whole concept that we're always worried about someone getting infected, having lateral movement get around to get to the intellectual property, well, that sort of ceases, except if you have really interesting malware and you have to go VPN to get out to the payment system. Now you've taken that into the corporate network from an outside. And so I guess my answer to every cybersecurity question is it depends. Depending on what your context is, the risk is less to the corporation if you truly stay outside, even though to the individual workstation it's higher. But there are situations where you can actually make it somewhat worse by having that lower boundary to get in and then dragging that stuff in on your own. So it's interesting. As I said, I'm in the middle of trying to run that risk assessment right now. So come back in a couple of months, I'll have an answer.
All right. That would be definitely interesting. Should have another talk on that one. So so that we can have some Q&A questions, I'm going to ask you, and I'll start with Art. What is the takeaway and lessons learned that you want to share today from our discussion?
I think there are two big lessons learned that have come out of today's discussion that struck me immediately. One, change happens, and so let's turn this change from a risk to an opportunity through our existing processes and understanding that. And second, don't shortchange the people side of this whole equation, because as we're moving forward, the people side is the part that's going to give us the best opportunity for advancement, for better results. And so we can't treat them like we always have as just like another appendage, like a cubicle.
Michael?
So I guess one of the key lessons for me is communication. Our corporate folks have been sending us, it feels like too many emails about what's going on, but they are keeping us informed as to what the status is, what we can expect, what's going to, as far as they know, what's going to happen going forward. And again, that's somewhat tied into what Art's talking about, keeping the people in mind, because one of the worst things about change is not knowing what's going to happen next. And so by communicating as much as they know and as clearly as they can, that really kind of helps allay some of those fears.
Yeah, I totally agree. Actually, one of the blogs that I'm going to publish soon is exactly about remote management, and the key is very short and frequent communication points, so that that feeling of being part of, that Steve mentioned a little bit earlier, in an office, you still have it because you have regular touch points. It's like you know, the ping, to know that that device is still on. Steve, what's your?
For me, one of my key lessons that's come out prior, but came out here as well from others, and I find it really interesting, and that is productivity went up. That wasn't expected. I didn't expect it. I don't think anyone else really could have. That lockdown, everyone's at home, everyone's going to have to work from home. No one was prepared. There wasn't, we didn't get like a couple months to think about it and set stuff up. And for us, I honestly feel like the first 3 weeks of lockdown, we were putting out about 3 times as much stuff as we normally did. It was a serious increase. And if you'd have told me that before it happened, I would have said you were mad. The perception of working from home, and we joked about it, but there was a bit of, oh, is that right, working from home? And it was completely the opposite. And it never could have been proven without something like this happening. So that was definitely one of my key lessons learned. I think the other one is that you can do 3 times as much stuff for a certain amount of time. And eventually you kind of, it's like a sprint, and you kind of need a rest. And one thing I haven't managed to answer yet, but we've been discussing, is what's the right balance? Because this is something we want to take going forwards and say, how much time should we have in the office, and how much time should we have outside the office, and should it be everyone in at the same time? And it's created a lot of questions to try and figure this out. And it's interesting that no one's ever thought of it, because we always just all went to the office.
Absolutely. So I guess we'll jump into some Q&A. In order, just before, we have prepared some slides to each of you, and I'll start with Art, sharing kind of their snapshot of opportunities to learn and to document yourself.
I will start very quickly by saying I don't have a slide, so we're going to just stay on this slide for me. But most importantly, as we change and we look and re-examine who we're doing business with, who we're working with, how we're working with, and all these things, there are a lot of local education facilities. I could sit here and put up a slide and say, come to University of Houston, take my program. If you don't live here, that doesn't help you, but you live somewhere. And as we're learning now, between distance and others, we need to start engaging differently with people. And this is an opportunity to go reach out to your local education places that have worked for you in the past and say, how can I help you and how can you help me going forward with all these new issues? So I'm going to just put up a call for go reach out to your own network of education and take these challenges and say, help us.
Part of it is EDX. You have plenty of courses available through EDX from a lot of universities. Michael?
So I'll highlight some industry organizations which are available that's focused on cybersecurity. If you're a member of the American...
Can we have the slide? I don't know.
There's no slide. I'm slideless also.
Okay.
So if you're a member of the American Petroleum Institute, there's an organization called the Information Technology Security Subcommittee, which has been in existence for about 20 years now, meets quarterly and also holds a conference usually in early November. That's an opportunity for folks to get together to discuss what they're doing in cybersecurity. It also has a policy advocacy side, which I'll skip for the moment. We have a meeting of that in a couple of weeks. If you're an API member, it's free to join. The International Association of Drilling Contractors, IADC, also has a cybersecurity subcommittee. So if you're in the drilling industry and want to talk about cybersecurity, that's another organization to look at. They're currently looking at publishing minimum guidelines for drilling sites for cybersecurity. And lastly, there are at least two information sharing and analysis centers, ISACs, within the industry. There's one called the ONG, Oil and Natural Gas ISAC, and there's also one I believe for downstream, among others. That's an opportunity to join. There's the membership fees are rated as to how large your companies are. So if you're a smaller company, you should get in for a whole lot less than Chevron pays. But they will share information about alerts, things coming from the government and other place, share intelligence and other elements of that nature. So if you're trying to keep track of the latest threats and things out there, that's a good organization to belong to as well.
Thank you, Michael. Steve?
Yeah, a couple things. So first of all, I'm actually on the committee for an event that's in later on this year, the SPE Society of Petroleum Engineers and the Institute of Measurement and Control, which is on the digitalization of process control. So it's very related to this. It's cybersecurity, but how do we actually do things in a way that doesn't make you vulnerable to cybersecurity threats, but allows you to get what you want to out of your measurement and control. So I didn't know you guys were going to speak about VPNs in this, but this is what we do as Intelligent Plants. This is the Industrial App Store, and it's really about getting value out of your OT data. It's not so much about your IT data, but your OT data in a way that doesn't give you risk. So there's no VPN, but all of your users are able to go and access that data without an incoming connection to the network. And the data stays on your network. So it gets stored there. You can use apps against it. Those apps are visualizations or analytics. And each of your employees are able to use those on their own PC or on another. In this case, the data is encrypted whenever it's moving, and at rest, it's really at site or in the browser. So it's a different way of thinking about getting access to your OT data, which is very hard to give over VPN because you really don't want to be exposing the control system to that sort of stuff. So if you're interested in that, take a look at appstore.intelligentplant.com or have a look at our YouTube or LinkedIn.
Thank you very much, Steve.
Thanks.
And I would be remiss if I don't plug a little bit InfoGuard. So you have to be a permanent resident or US citizen But it's a partnership between the FBI and the private sector. I've been, well, many years now in this association, where really it's public and private collaborating together to exchange information, really to protect any critical infrastructure, covers all kind of industries, and there's a lot of specific insight for those different industries, and lots of tools and methodologies available. So I highly recommend joining, and you have the infogov.org link if you're interested in sharing about cybersecurity and all kinds of security, also physical security between peers. So now I'm going to open it to the Q&A. There's been few questions already trickling. So so we have questions from Charles Drobny. What's the bigger impact on the people side? Remote working, worrying about being furloughed, or rigors brought about by secured staffing, reduced staffing, sorry.
Well, I think Michael already addressed this to a great degree, that how the institution, be it your unit, be it your entire company, be it a location-based, communicates on a frequent, even if it's small, short, keeping everybody involved to avoid what Steve put, like, wow, I had to come into the office just to see if things were happening without me. It's all about communication, and that comes back to the people side.
Okay. We have a technical question here. I'm a network admin at my organization. What kind of SIEM or IDS you use or recommend? I'm looking to make more of an impact on my organization with helping securing infrastructure. Michael or Art?
As a resident techie, I'm going to say, wow, that is so situation dependent. How big a network, how much traffic, what existing infrastructure do you have? What specifically, rather than saying, this is what I want to buy, I think the more important question is, if you want to make an impact, what am I trying to do? Because an SIEM solution, which everybody, I'm going to say right now, should have, is meaningless without the people behind it to use it to make a difference. And so if you don't have the people in place to do it, then why buy the tool? It's kind of like saying, wow, what kind of truck should I buy to move my stuff to the marketplace? And the next question is, do you have truck drivers? Do you have any of that stuff?
Couldn't agree more. Yeah. I've seen people buy some stuff from us and not think about that. And it's really a shame, because they pay for a subscription for a tool and there's no one ready to use it. And they expected it was just going to happen. So completely agree. Couldn't agree more. The biggest issue is, how are you going to change your business to make use of that? Not what are you going to buy?
And also, I'll agree also, the environment. If you're heavily into cloud, then you may need to depend on the products that the vendor provides, because you may buy a SIM and then you can't get the data anyway. So again, you got to take into account everything everyone said here to determine where you're going with this. It's not an easy question to answer.
So there's someone going back to this notion of remote operation of OT. What has been the biggest security challenge for the OT environment?
You want to take that, Art, or do you want me to answer first and you can correct me?
Well, I think we're both going to say probably the word people.
Okay.
I would join you there.
Not just that people make bad decisions, but getting people that as we move OT more and more digital, are my engineers ready to play in that new digital space? Corporate America, corporate world, corporate your company, call it what you want. they've decided to connect this stuff to the internet. So
Right.
that was not a choice that the local engineer, the guy in the plant, made. Now we got to figure out how to deal with that and how to manage that risk. And that's a people thing.
Yeah, and I think the next question is going to be on that one. I mean, it's interesting because so I work a lot on digital transformation, and basically my response is people, people, people. I mean, the technology. Okay, we're among geeks, and for us, the technology is something that is kind of normal, and I can imagine that for some people it seems a little bit complex. But at the end of the day, it's really how we use things, and we choose the technology for a certain purpose, and not just because it's a shiny car and we want to have that car in front of the house. So, what is the ultimate final backstop to digital risk? Is risk centered around safety, operations, or all of the above?
Yes.
Yeah. You know, risk is...
It depends on what you're looking at. I mean, obviously, if you're in process control, safety and operations comes into play. If you're in the business network, safety is a little less in play, but operations may be. You also have intellectual property, variety of other things you need to take into account. So it depends on what you're looking at and where.
I remember this might be a weird angle, but it's like when you look at risk, you can always zoom out, and you always should. Because if you go, is the risk here? The answer is always yes, but it's always somewhere else you didn't think about.
Yeah.
And one that I always find people don't think about is, what's the risk of not doing this? So it's easy to think about the risk of doing something, and then you don't do it because you didn't consider the other case. And I remember that being the case with a service company where they were looking at a piece of work, and they said, if we take on this piece of work, we could be sued if something goes wrong. And they didn't do anything about it. Now, if they'd taken that on, the business would have worked. But because they didn't, it was a large job. The business didn't work. So, you know, you need to weigh up all of these things and really open your eyes and go sideways.
I think that's something I learned a long time ago. When I say a long time ago, it was last century. I love being able to say that now. When I was in the military, probably before half the people on this webinar were born, one of the things they taught us going through Officer Candidate School was no decision is a decision. And so when a business comes up and has to make a decision on something, not making the decision, if you're in a position where you need to make a decision, you don't, you stall, that sends messages. That is a decision. And generally speaking, at least I can guarantee in combat, no decision is always the wrong decision. So, and it works out poorly.
To all the aspiring CEOs as well. The quality of a CEO is to make a decision, is wrong or right, at least it's a decision.
Yep.
So I see Simon popping. I think it's our time is due, and I will let him put some words of conclusion now.
No, I mean, I'm just going to say thank you very, very much to each of the panelists. It's been a fascinating discussion, and we do have some more questions. So what we're going to do is we'll finish this webinar now. We're already running over time, and I realise people are very busy and need to jump off for other things. But we're going to answer some of the other questions offline, and we'll make them available on the recording. It just leaves me to say thank you very much. There's a list of some of our upcoming events on your screen there. To our American friends who are on the line, happy 4th of July this weekend. To our Canadian friends, happy Canada Day for, I think it was yesterday or the day before. And everyone keep safe, and we look forward to seeing you at one of our events in the near future. Thank you.
And Simon, for you in the Great Britain world, happy Traders Day.
Thank you, and I'll just correct you there. I'm actually Australian and not not British, but it's a common mistake.
I thought you were sitting in London.
No, I'm sitting in Brisbane.
Oh, okay. I had you on the wrong side of the world.
I won't take offence. Thank you all.
Yeah, cheers.